It's the True Faith podcast. Newcastle United 1, Arsenal 2. You've got myself, Alex Hurst, Cy Campbell, Ben Wade, Adam Widritton, here to talk to you about what went wrong, what needs to go right, and basically where we are at the minute. But before we get into all that, I have to give a massive plug to the True Faith Supporters Forum, which is Tyneside Irish Centre, 11th of October. The two previous events we had with the local press lads sold out well in advance, so get your tickets now, £10 per person. It all goes to the Newcastle United Fans Food Bank, and we've raised about £7,500 from the previous two events, or you've raised, the people who've come, and we're hoping to get over 10 grand for this one. The guests that we'll have are simply sensational. Find out more information on the description or the link that I'm going to put in this podcast or whatever platform you listen to. Get to the True Faith website to get tickets for the likes of David Conn, football business analyst for The Guardian, one of the best in the world at what he does, and is also a long-time critic of Mike Ashley and Sports Direct, and an ally of most supporter football causes. I've got Craig Houston from Sons of Struth, Rangers podcast that we did recently. Craig was one of the voices that you heard. Massive listenership, about 13,000 people listen to that podcast alone. So this is your chance to hear Craig speak, ask him some questions, all that kind of stuff. And finally, Jay from Sons of Spirit of Shankly, the Liverpool supporters forum, one of the foremost supporters unions in the country. Absolutely crucial, their work in getting the away tickets reduced to £30. So these are the people that are going to be talking to us about what fans can do to take the fight to Mike Ashley. Get yourself along. The Magpie Group are involved. They're going to have a platform as well on the night to take your questions. And that's it. Lads, Newcastle United beaten by Arsenal, and I'll start this one off. It was a really, 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 really grim day. Nothing went right. That's harsh. The first half was all right, but as positive as I'm sure that we're going to try and be, Arsenal were just really bad, and it's like I feel more frustrated about this result than any other because, Spurs were unlucky. Chelsea, the referee, City are just a great team. I can't blame anyone. You know what? We're going to talk about injuries. We're going to talk about tactics. But it was just one of those days where I think the stadium was flat, the atmosphere was flat, and it was just a bad day for Newcastle United. I'm not really sure where we'll go from here. So you're looking at me, so we're going to come to you.
You mentioned Spurs and Chelsea there as if they weren't as good as City. Like, all three of those teams are far, far superior to us, and we matched them and took them really close. The difference yesterday was that Arsenal weren't worlds ahead of us. They weren't a brilliant team, and we've somehow put in one, arguably our worst performance, at least in the second half. Anyway, first half, I'm sure we'll dissect it. It was decent, in spite of not really creating any chances, but we just absolutely fell out of the game from the moment that free kick hit the back of the net. That game was over for us, and that is a worry, and that's really disappointing. Because as you said, Arsenal had offered nothing up to that point. They weren't a good team, and we've suddenly collapsed at the hands of a team that would,
That won't be anywhere near the top four.
Yeah.
This isn't me anti-Arsenal. Couldn't give a toss about Arsenal. Do what they fucking want for me. I'm not. This isn't me. I can't stand Arsenal. That they should be better than they are. I don't think they're very good, and I don't think they're going to be close to where they want to be this season. But they still made us look like a championship side ultimately.
That first half performance from them was awful. Like, a better team than us, or a team that put in a better performance than us would have taken advantage of that. I think. That young lad that David Luiz looked like, I can't think of his name at the minute, but that's his name.
Guendouzi. Yeah.
It was just a proper show pony of a performance. He looked great. He was on the ball all the time. He was running everywhere. He was the epitome of everything they did, but they did absolutely nothing because of it. He didn't want to pass the ball forward, and there was opportunities there to really get into them. I mean, a midfield. I mean, we called it before the game that their midfield is quite weak, and had we have played Shelvey, I think we probably could have taken advantage of them. Obviously, he wasn't fit, but there was an opportunity there that we missed, and because of that, we allowed them to get away with it for 45 minutes. The second they took him off, it turned the game, and okay, it wasn't that specific substitution that turned things. It was the free kick, as you said, and Xhaka probably never hit a ball better than that in his life. Was a great free kick, and we were directly behind it. He's hit it so sweetly. There wasn't really a lot Dubravka could have done, but the second that went in, they just realised, actually, what the hell have we been doing for 45 minutes? Let's just go at these lads.
Well, pass the ball forwards.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and just they played the game into our hands in the first 45 minutes. We just didn't have the quality out there, unfortunately, to take advantage of that. And then our chance had gone. And from that point, they quickly scored a second. Özil's taking a goal really well. And it took us really 40 minutes to really sort of get back into the game at that point. I mean, we finished relatively well. We created a few chances. Hossley's had a great chance at the end that he's missed, but it just took us so long to react and really as bad as they were for the first 45 minutes, they showed that they're just a better team in that second 45, and that was frustrating.
I agree with you, and it's you talk about sort of missed opportunities, Ben, and it's but in a way, what more can you do? You know, for Arsenal to get at them, we knew that we needed to high press. It's what Rafa Benitez has done countless times before. Perez started. Jacob Murphy's probably one of the best players that we have to be able to just tirelessly run, but to be tactically aware as well, and just have that awareness. He's still raw. He'll still lose the ball, but without Rondon on the pitch, without Shelvey being able to pick people out, the fact that Hayden started meant that we couldn't better their what was perceived to be their weak midfield. So you're right in that we missed opportunities, but it's not really an opportunity if we don't have the players fit, or we don't have the players again who've travelled thousands of miles for international football. So it's, in terms of team selection, I don't know what more we could have done, but I agree. I thought the first half was defensively very solid. There were no shots on target from any side in the first half, but in terms of pressing them high, I only saw us force them to make one error, and I think it's when was it Czech or a defender put it out for a corner for us. That was one time that we tried to impose ourselves on them, and that wasn't enough. And we didn't know it at the time. After it was a solid first half performance, and I thought it's pretty much what I'd hope and expect from a defensive Rafa side against a top team. But we didn't know until the second half that was our chance.
I mean, we were really positive at half time on the Matchday podcast. We felt like this Arsenal performance that we were against, that this was going to be an opportunity for us, and we were saying about the substitutions in the second half were going to be key. Unfortunately, what we didn't realise was obviously Lascelles was carrying the knock and obviously had to come off, and I think that probably impacted things as well, because I think had Rafa have had those three substitutions, I mean, we talked about potentially bringing the likes of Shelvey, Kennedy and Rondon all on the pitch against that Arsenal team that we'd seen that first 45 minutes, could have had some joy against them, but obviously things were taken out of his control.
Well, that was it. I think Muto came on because I don't think Perez put in a performance that we kind of saw first half of the season, last season, Perez, rather than his amazing form in the second half of the season. So that took out a substitution because we needed to do the high press. The Lascelles injury looked like he was hobbling for most of the first half, and it proved right. And then you've got like one more player to bring on after that. I just feel that had this fixture been a week later, you'd have likely had Shelvey, Kennedy, and Rondon starting that game, and it's a completely different game, and you get a completely different feel. And people saw that team sheet, and I was doing the match day pod when that team sheet came out. Everyone saw Hayden, and everyone groaned, and you saw Hossley's name, and you thought, yeah, I knew that was going to happen as well. And it doesn't fill you with confidence. And maybe, do you think that was a reason for a lot of people thinking that the atmosphere was flat yesterday? Do you think that had a lot to do with it?
Yeah, I think what Ben said. Yeah, at half time, I think everyone was pretty content. I mean, the atmosphere wasn't great for. I know Arsenal on a headline opponent anymore. People don't think of the Arsenal game like they do the Chelsea game, the Man U game, and you don't get that same buzz in the crowd, which is a shame because we need that this season. And Rafa will never stop banging on about how important the crowd can be. But what was so weird is how the second half just wasn't what anyone was expecting at all. Like I said, we were all talking about, well, get some of the subs on. We can probably take this to them here. We'll get some out of this game. And it was the absolute opposite. I mean, we're just as we're switching off the match data for the second half, the lads come out like, oh, what's going on here? There's a sub. And just nobody... I mean, you're a bit close to the pitch. He said Lascelles, we had no idea. I had no idea he was carrying a knock.
Quite funny, because listeners might know, because I've said it before, I'm not with the lads in Block V at the minute because of an injury. So I'm front row of the Gallagher again. And it's quite nice to be taken out your comfort zone. And obviously I stand with all of you lot, so we'll have broadly similar opinions on the game. But it's interesting that there's a son and a dad next to me that, again, I don't mean this disparaging, but they literally could not understand why taking the cells off. They were just like, what? Why would you take him off? And I had to say, it's so rude of me. I mean, he's probably injured. It's like that. It's the same with on social media last night, people saying Rafa's got no excuse for just benching his two best players. And it's like, John Joe Shelvey's literally injured. Like Rafa said, he's carrying an injury. They're trying.
Kennedy's injured as well.
Yeah, they're trying not to make him tear his thigh muscle. And he's on the bench. I mean, I wanted to get in this later, but he's on the bench. And he might have been okay for 10 minutes at 1-1 or 0-1 or 0-0, but he's not all right for 10 minutes at 0-2 because what's the point in it? So no one will feel as frustrated as Rafa Benitez. It's not. I mean, I want to get into it more in terms of players and positions and what went right and wrong there.
Yeah, but I think the point is we were looking comfortable, and even the first 5 minutes of the second half, nothing was really happening, and then the free kicks absolutely killed her. And
do you think? I mean, I haven't seen it again, but my feeling was when at the time that it was a very soft foul.
It was I watched it again this morning, and it's a foul. Fernandes had a really good game. There's a bad foul to give away, and it's one of those things. It's 30 yards from goal. You think, and it doesn't really matter normally.
And it's central. It's one of the worst places to have a free kick.
It's just a great free kick, but
like
it was
you said,
a free kick.
Rafa's thinking, what? I've got some changes lined up here. We can get to 60 minutes, keep it 0-0, and then maybe I can go and try and get something out of this game. Because as it stood, 0-0 was fine. Everyone was happy with 0-0, and we just see how the game develops. Keep ourselves in it, and then see if we can, last 50 minutes, as we have done most games this season, see if we can have a bit of a go at them at the end. And just what happened between the 55th minute and the 65th minute was just the game was over and it just went, and Rafa will be so pissed off.
It flicked a switch. It was so weird. They were nothing, and then suddenly that goal gave them all the belief. Yeah. And basically they played in the second half how I expected them to have played the whole game. And maybe us as a fan base, we've been spoiled by the 2-1 win last year, and the fact that we beat Chelsea 3-0, and the fact that we beat Man United. Like, do people now expect these to be just winnable games because they're still really, really tough teams to beat? So I don't know if they just found belief and we were out of it by the hour mark. It was 2-0.
You made a good point there. Sorry, Ben. You made a good point there that there's two teams playing, and as bad as we were in the second half, Arsenal were much better. So it's like you don't even know whether we got worse. We may have just stayed at the same level, but for Arsenal to go up a gear or two with the players they've got, let's face it, we have Perez and Joselu against their front three of Ozil, Lacazette, and Aubameyang, who cost 150 million quid. Now that's
they're excellent.
Yeah,
players.
That's not Arsenal's fault. That's not Arsenal's fault that we are what we are. It's not Arsenal's fault that we've got our Alexander Mitrovic money in the bank rather than on the pitch. It's not Arsenal's fault that, in my opinion, the best striker at the football club yesterday, the second best striker, was playing for West Brom on Friday night. It's like this is where we are. But before we go into the team and stuff like that, and I want to talk a little bit about the protests which Adam was at and is partly responsible for.
Don't tell his employer that though.
Why? I mean, I'll give you a good way to look at this. Luke Edwards has just tweeted before we started recording that the atmosphere was shite. Basically, I think George Caulkin has agreed and Mark Douglas has agreed. And they're not fans, but they are people who are good journalists and well placed to analyze this kind of thing. Why is there not the kind of mentality from the fans that a point there would have been a good result? And I'm guilty of it because before the game I'm thinking we need to beat these because we haven't won a game yet. Why do you think, is it what you said, Alan, where people have been spoiled? Why isn't there that bunker mentality that us against the world that we had it towards the end of last season? You look at the Burnley game, for example, the atmosphere was good. It was 1-1, but people were kind of up for it, whereas yesterday was just flat from start to finish.
There's a little bit of, last season we should never have been relegated, but last season we're a newly promoted team. We're Rafa's first full season in the Premier League. We've got a team of players who've worked their asses off to get where we were, and everyone was kind of behind that. This season just wasn't meant to be that, and it's not Rafa or the players' fault, but nobody wanted to go through another full season of having to see us scraping for every point against every team and not be able to put in like positive, happy performances and enjoying the football, because Rafa doesn't want to have to do this either. None of the players want to have to go through all this, but I think you know what our fans are like. We've been through enough, and it's like this season was meant to be different. This is potentially Rafa's last year as it stands. And it was meant to be the one where at least we try and have a go and see if we can win something. But instead, we've taken a massive backward step. And it's really hard to get yourself motivated to go through another season of that. And I can kind of appreciate that.
We finished on a high last season. I mean, that run-in was ridiculous. Everyone was absolutely buzzing. And I remember finishing the end of last season. I mean, we beat Chelsea 3-0. Thinking, what have we got in store for over the summer and the next year? Naively, obviously, knowing exactly what we're dealing with here. But I was encouraged and had a lot of excitement about what potentially Rafa could do if he got all the money that obviously we're talking about players leaving the club and what that would mean for the war chest, and just it hasn't materialised, and I think that's taken a lot of the wind out of people's sails, and it's the negativity that we've had over the summer has carried on to the pitch, and I think the just people are fed up, and that's why, because you go to games now just think, well, even if we do, like, it has to take supernatural performances from this team to beat the likes of Chelsea, Man City, and Man U, because they're so far back. And that's it. And we're not getting that, so people aren't getting that excitement. And unfortunately, you're right. It's not the players or the manager's fault, but equally, it's not really the fans' fault, because what is there to get excited about with the status that everything is at the minute?
Yeah, and I think that's it. For me, it's threefold. I think, for a start, and George Colkin mentioned this earlier today, in the Championship, we had something to play for, and it was to win the league and get promoted. Last season, it was all about survival. In this season, it's just what are we actually aiming for? It's very difficult to aim for 10th, or do you know what I mean? Like, where's the passion? Where's the drive towards? What's the focus? What's the target?
Yeah, what's the point of existing right now as Newcastle? What is our purpose? And it's very hard to see, and we're all scratching our heads at it and going to matches like that, thinking, what's the best we're hoping for here? A draw against Arsenal, put 2 points after 5 games. It's just like
so there's that. There's what Ben mentioned in terms of the lack of transfers and the lack of excitement and buzz around. Imagine we'd been minus 40 million in terms of what we spent. We'd have spent an extra 60 million based on what the net spend was from the summer, and there would have been so much more to be excited about. People would have been, buying new shirts with their favourite new players on the back, all this kind of stuff. We've been bereft of that. And then the other thing that we can't forget is the actual fixture list that we've had. Like, had we had sort of, it's difficult because all the games that we've lost have sort of half expected us to lose. So it's a tricky situation that we're in, because you look at it and like, oh God, we've lost 4 out of 5 games. But taking a look at the perspective, they're all games that we have been edged in. We probably could have got a draw against Chelsea, Tottenham in terms of our performances, but it didn't happen. I don't think we deserved anything yesterday given the second half performance. Man City, that's a long shot anyway. But
if you check those 5 games we've had so far and spread them over the season, and they just happened as one-offs, no one really batting an eyelid.
Exactly.
But when you have 5 difficult games in a row like that and 5 negative results, it just breeds negativity, and it's really hard to get over. And unfortunately, where Newcastle fans are letting themselves down is this is a time when we really do need to galvanise and keep together and keep the positivity and kind of make a point of we're still behind this club and manager in spite of what the hell's going on upstairs. But
then also, the counter argument to that is that the stadium's full. You find me, another club. I mean, you look at Burnley; they have taken like 30 fans to Wolves, and Watford rarely sell out, and they sold out yesterday against Man United. Bournemouth don't sell out very often. Leicester, there's often empty seats, and it's like, I'm not disagreeing with you, but like, Palace is sold out, Man United sold out. Like, if there was one fan base who was sticking behind the team, it's got to be this one.
I just want to come on that point as well, because I agree with you, Dodge. I think the fans the fans have to turn up and get behind the team, but the team have got to do something to get them behind them, and it works both ways. And I think one of the disappointments as well is we've talked about the lack of activity in the summer. There's not really been any individuals so far that have stood up and really give us anything to get excited about. I mean, you look at the new signings that have come in. Rondon's had a couple of glimpses. He's looked solid, but he's still not on the pitch. I mean, didn't play yesterday. I think Kennedy's ability we know is there, but he's had a few poor performances, and I think that was one substitution yesterday when you came on. You thought, right, come on, have a go at these. Like, this is an opportunity against Bellerin, who's regressed as a footballer, I think, over his career, and his player that Kennedy in his full flight could have run rings around, and he didn't do any of that. He didn't give us any opportunities. We've got Hostel starting up front, who is trying hard and love his effort levels, but he's just not that ability. We had a midfield of Hayden and Diarme. There's nothing going on creatively there. Richie's not had a great start to the season. He's doing what he can, but again, he's not firing on all cylinders. So it's really hard to get. I mean, you mentioned it before. The best performance yesterday, other than the foul, was Fernandes. And who's going to get excited over a centre back having a great performance? It's just very difficult at the minute, I think, to get excited about the performances. And yes, we're defensively we look very solid. Rafa's doing a brilliant job in terms of we're staying in games against the best teams, and we're nullifying a lot of their potential sort of ability to break us down. But there's just very little for us to get excited. You don't get excited about a defensive conceding 2 goals against the top 4.
I think the person you're trying to describe is John Joe Shelvey. The first 2 games of this season, Sorry, the first sort of 2-3 games of the season, I thought he was absolutely excellent. I thought he was really, really good. Stats wise, brilliant in terms of his effort, in terms of him sort of rallying. Like last month I compared his performances last year at home to Spurs and then this year at home to Spurs, and it was just a complete sea change. He was a leader out there. He was taking responsibility. He was looking around and wondering why people weren't, given the effort that he was in terms of his sort of final third passes, his creating chances. Like, he's such a pivot in our team, and we have missed him. And he is somebody that you can hang your hat on and get excited about. He does lift the crowd.
I mean, just one. What says it all to me is the fact that the two players that were getting the song sung about in the first half were DeAndre Yedlin and Paul Dummett, who are two fullbacks. That says it all. Why aren't we singing about the attacking players? Because
they're not very
doing
good.
it.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, let's get on to the protest before we get back onto tactics and players. Adam, protest yesterday, it seemed from everything I've seen to go very well. Good turnout, good visual demonstration. But then I've also seen some stuff on social media from the likes of If Rafa Goes We Go and the Magpie Group themselves talking about differences of opinion and criticism. So did something happen? Like, what happened? Were there arguments or what's kind of gone on here?
No, I think there's a few naysayers, which you're always going to get.
But were there naysayers at the event?
Yes.
That's mental.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you don't agree with protesting or you think there's other ways to go, like, I guess the message is crack on and do it. We need lots of people doing lots of different things to form one big sort of movement. I mean, generally speaking, we all need to get together, and a fractured fan base is nothing to fear at all. But I think people criticising people for trying to make a difference is odd if they're not going to bring any solutions themselves to the table, or they're not actually doing anything. It's an odd stance to take, but and it plays into Mike Ashley's hands. So it is. But if they want to crack on and do that, that's everyone's personal choice. Magpie Group or whatever. We can't dictate how people should feel or what. Everyone's going to have a difference of opinion. But I like to think that this time round, it seems to be more of a collective agreement that what we're doing is the right way forward in comparison to sort of previous campaigns, if you will. It's still very much in its early stages. There's a long way to go. Lots of people want boycotts, but for a boycott to work, as we well know, we need more support. There needs to be more exposure and need more validation that what we're doing is what the wider fan base want. Because as much as you might get a few hundred retweets on Twitter, that means nothing in the real world. You need to bring in events like the protest yesterday out, on the streets to the people, face to face with real people who aren't necessarily on social media. It's good. Like I say, yesterday it was really visual. It was very well observed. Police were there, but there was no actual trouble there, and it wound down very naturally. And there was lots of people singing hate for Mike Ashley, love for the team, and it's how it should have been. And I like to think there's going to be a lot more of that. But it takes time to grow these movements. It's not. There's no overnight fix, and I guess it's easy. It's very, very easy to criticize because you're putting yourself out there to, we're going to do this protest, and it's very easy to say, well, what's shouting at a shop going to do? Do you know what I mean? But it's more about that. It's more about the exposure. It's the more no exposure you get in national media outlets, the more those that aren't on Twitter and Facebook are going to know about this kind of stuff and hopefully want to get involved and offer their support and services to a movement. It shouldn't be just the responsibility of those who go to the Magpie Group meeting, the closed meetings. It should be everybody who wants to get involved, to spread the word, to tell their mates, to tell their dads, granddads, their wives, do you know what I mean? Everybody who they feel should know about this stuff and want to get involved. It's everyone's responsibility to spread the word and to make this movement something worthwhile.
One thing I would say, the more results we get like yesterday, the more people will start buying into it, because something's got to change. That the match yesterday takes you back to why those protests are taking place. I think people have been guilty of having slightly short memories in the last few weeks and getting on the back of the manager. There was a lot of groaning in the ground at what I've already described as players who aren't really that good, not doing very well at football. Like, that's the team we've been given with a world-class manager, and people shouldn't forget that. It's so important that we remember what the problem is here, and that's what these people are doing. That's what the protests are about. There's one huge problem at the club, and we've got enough people now to get together and try and do something about it. And anyone who wants to say that, to be a naysayer or to put that down or to sit and kind of shake their heads and go, oh, it's no point in doing that. What have you got then? What are you going to go at the game just complain at Rafa instead because the players aren't playing well? Like it's just mental that the longer this goes on, I'd like to think that it does grow because there's a reason for it.
I mean, we've been guilty of that as well, though. I mean, I remember sitting here last season talking about how great these players were and loving every single one of them and thinking they were the best thing since sliced bread. And we can be guilty of that, but you get swept up in that. And I think it is one of those things where you just, when things are going great, everything's brilliant. But when things are going bad, then things look a hell of a lot worse. It's
not that though. I mean, there are a good set of lads. We've never questioned their application. I mean, maybe a little bit once or twice, but it's a good group of players where every team around us is spending money again, improving again. This is what we're dealing with.
Yeah, we seem to have got worse. Yeah. To be honest with you, that was going to be one of your questions.
Comparatively to the teams around us, we have got worse.
But there's a good question here from Sam. Says, is the malaise and blame culture in UFC spreading downwards from the boardroom to the club's other staff? Basic maintenance needs at the ground are not being met, yet fans are told it's because they have to report it. So this is a reference to Eddie, the maintenance guy, doing a 4-piece part with the Chronicle, which it's like, on one hand, well done for like someone from the club actually coming out on record that's like, never happened before. On the other hand, I think major issues with his answers, and if that's how he actually thinks that it's fans' jobs to report things, that's worrying. And also this idea that, well, the European rugby finals are coming, Ed Sheeran came, the stadium must be all right. Ed Sheeran's manager doesn't give a fuck whether there's EFL branding like on a concourse, and while it's not the biggest, most pressing issue at the football club, it's symbolic of how things are, of how people at the club, as Sam kind of implies, are kind of either breeding off the negativity from above, or it's a kind of set culture within the club that people just don't really care anymore, and it's the bare minimum culture. I mean, we must be clear, as a first team squad and a first team staff, in terms of investment, the bare minimum hasn't even been achieved. So they're even lower than that. But in terms of the people that work at the club, is this, like, for any views, is this a big deal, the way that the stadium seems to be crumbling?
I engaged with Lee Marshall on Twitter because there was obviously, I think, a lot of his answers. I mean, he's just doing his job. He's just trying to keep his job as well. He doesn't want to. Well, he doesn't want to be subordinate, and I'm sure Eddie doesn't either. And that's probably why you got the answers that you got. But looking beyond, I think that the answers. It's frustrating when the responses are, well, you just have to report it to this. That's the process. And it's like, well, why? We're paying a lot of money. That the season ticket prices have just gone up. We're paying a lot of money for this. Can't we reasonably expect this to be included in the ticket price? Do you know what I mean? Like, just why is there suddenly this suggestion of austerity and big society that everyone needs to muck in together to make this work? It's like, and Lee Marshall was saying, well, I've met the maintenance team and they do a really good job. And do you know what it is? It's not their fault. I don't doubt their effort. I don't doubt any effort of the maintenance team. But surely if they put in that much effort and the stadium still looks like it does and everyone's picking up on stuff, does that not tell you that there's a lack of investment and they need some bloody help? Like, but he doesn't. He couldn't answer back to that because.
Yeah, it's not. It's above his pay grade.
It's skeleton staff. Listen to paying customers. Don't just dismiss what paying customers are telling you. If it's one or two, yeah, it's just a couple of whingers. If it's like a couple of hundred people saying the same thing on social media, like, maybe the business needs to look at its paying customers and accept that it's something that needs to be addressed with actual conviction.
The answers are laughable, and like Lee Charnley's PR piece that came out at the end of in May or June, whatever, he did a kind of day with the local press. There are no counter questions. There's questions put to them in print, and then the answers given, and then for what I presume the Chronicle can't and isn't allowed to then say, hang on a second, and then come in with another question. It's just left. So when Eddie says that Mike Ashley and the club have got big plans for the training ground, like, someone should be able to go and say, hang on there, Mike Ashley was in print recently saying that the training ground doesn't need any improvement because the team finished 10th, which is like, a laughable argument anyway. But ignoring that, it just seems it's more kind of North Korean PR from the club. And you say that Lee Marshall's, doing his best, and I'm sure he is. But this idea that we're wrong, or the people who are reporting these things are wrong because the lads are doing their best. Well, I think the team are doing their best, and we're still shit. Like, that's kind of so. To answer Sam's original question, I think there's not a bad point here where there seems to be this collective mentality. Well, we're doing our best. Well, sometimes maybe your best isn't good enough. If that's your best, if that is your best, if that's the best Newcastle United can do is to have the stadium in the state it's in, then I'd suggest that your best isn't good enough, and there's systematically something wrong within your institution and organisation. Let's not forget that this season alone, Newcastle United will record a record turnover. In its entire existence as a football club, it will have more disposable income to spend. The wage bill won't have gone up significantly. We'll likely have £80 million wage bill-ish, and 160 to 70 million pound turnover, and they're saying that they're doing their best.
Had we spent net 40 million this summer, and people say, there's some mould in the corner there, and that post hasn't been changed in 3 years, the club could turn around and say, well, we bought you a £20 million striker, so that's where the money went. But when you don't do either, you don't buy players or you upkeep the stadium, then paying customers can reasonably expect, like, what are you doing? Where's the money? What are you actually investing it in? Because that needs investment, and nothing's getting done. So I think had we got the squad that we hoped for and the transfers that we wanted, people would be blind to the stadium deficiencies. But here we are.
It's really sad, isn't it? St James's Park, when I first had my season ticket in 2002, was the second biggest stadium in the country. You had so much pride in it. Apart from Old Trafford, St James's Park was the next best stadium that we had, and it's fifth or sixth now.
You got to remember that at the last fans forum, Lee Charnell, whoever answered the question, said that we weren't going to extend the stadium because the tickets against bottom of the league West Brom sold out. The ground sold out despite West Brom not bringing any fans, but didn't sell out fast enough. That's the mentality that you're dealing with. They don't know what they have. They think that what we provide as a fan base is normal. They think this is the bar, and it's not. Like we mentioned before, try being Bournemouth chairman, try being Leicester chairman, or all these things, and they would kill for our support. They would absolutely kill for it. But I think everyone listening, we haven't said anything new here or anything that anyone doesn't know already, so we may as well move on. Si, quite often on social media, and if you're speaking to people that say Rafa shouldn't be beyond criticism, normally followed by a criticism. Do you think he actually is beyond criticism? Because I'm not sure that he is. Let's address the team selection. How can he pick Isaac Hayden, considering Isaac Hayden both told the local press away from the club, fed to the local media, or his agent did, that he wanted to fuck off in the summer, and B, he put in a performance at Cardiff that can only be described as dirge.
Well, you put in another one of those performances, didn't you? Yeah, it's a funny one, and you know what? The team selection baffled a lot of people. What I would say is, he's not immune to criticism. He will make mistakes, and he's quite open about that. I know we tend to strongly vary on the side of there's always a reason behind what he's doing, and he always, to be honest to him, the reason I give him so much credit is because he answers these questions. If people have been laying into him for his substitutions, for his lineup, for all this stuff before the game, and we always ask the question if Shelvey, Rondon, and Kennedy can be on the bench, they must be fit enough to start a game. If they're not, then should they even be on the bench? It's a fair question. And
do we have a choice?
Yeah. Who else do you put on the bench?
That's why. So in a normal circumstance, if we had a full squad of other players who should be there, who can
Victor Fernandez, Sean Longstaff.
It's just getting ridiculous. But Rafa came out and addressed it. He addressed the fact that Shelvey wasn't quite fit enough. He addressed the fact that Lascelles wasn't fit, but he just went with him because they took some gambles. He addressed the fact that Richie wasn't fit enough, but we played him because he looked like he was going to do all right. He thought he was going to be okay. Kennedy's he's off the back of a little bit of a bad run. He's been getting some flack. Why not give Murphy a go against Bellerin? We decided that was not a bad idea. We get him behind Bellerin, but he addressed all these things. He answered the questions, and he doesn't just hide behind the fact that you don't know what you're talking about. He wants to explain. He wants people to understand his decisions, and I always appreciate that.
I was just going to say it was pretty deflating. I mean, I remember we were recording the match day when the team came out, and we all were really positive about what an opportunity this might be. We talked about how Arsenal have looked so far this season, and this was probably going to be our best opportunity of taking one of the scalps in the top 6. And that team selection came out, and it was just And
it's interesting because we didn't play 5 at the back, which is what a lot of people are worried about. But when you could play 3 at the back, 2 at the back, 1 at the back. When your midfield 2 is what it was. I'm going to criticise here, and I agree with everything that you say, Si. Rondon and Key, okay, they've been across the world, and fine. And I understand. We all know, because we've been doing this podcast, and like you people listen, we pay attention to these things. Rafa at the international break, he likes the lads who are with him on the training ground day in, day out. It doesn't matter how good you are. I mean, it does matter how good you are. It more matters how bad the players are behind you. So the likes of Yedlin will always get in. It didn't used to, but now, because he has no competition for his place, he'll always come back. No matter where he's been, he'll always get in. So that kind of bothers me a little bit. So Manquillo's on the bench yesterday and he doesn't start, but Yedlin starts. So Yedlin can go to the USA, play 2 games and come back and get a game. Rondon and Key, who would have fundamentally improved that starting 11, I don't even think that's up for debate. I mean, maybe, it's football, it's a game of small detail, but you're not telling me that Key alongside Diarmi, because Key comes in and improves Diarmi, who doesn't have to be on the ball as much and play the ball, because his role is to win the ball and give it to Shelvey normally, but there's none of that yesterday, and you see some wasted possession, and then Hoslu and Rondon's not even a conversation. So if Yedlin can come back and play from going as far almost as Rondon, why can't we do the same for those two?
I would argue that we don't know the fitness levels of the team. Rondon hasn't played 90 minutes for Rafa Benitez. Yedlin has, and it comes down to this trust level, which you can either agree with or disagree, I think. But he has played Hoslu twice at home against big sides, and he has rewarded them with 2 goals. So as much as Rondon didn't even, I mean, he came on in the second half against
See, I disagree slightly, because Hoslu came on for Rondon in that Chelsea game, and I'm way more comfortable with that. With Rondon, even if it's only 55 minutes out of Rondon, Hoslu came on against Chelsea and got a goal, whereas...
No, I'd see your point, but ultimately, we don't know. And what you can... And to back up what Si was saying just before, what I like and respect about Rafa Benitez is that, yes, of course he gets things wrong, and he's not infallible, and of course he's... we shouldn't not criticize him. However, everything he does at least has logic and purpose behind it. There will be a good reason why, as he's mentioned, he sort of like he threw back every criticism that was thrown at him. People might have thought, "Oh, why didn't Rondon come on at all when we were trailing the game?" But maybe it might be a simple way of he's managing his squad. He sees Palace as, when we're 2-0 down, he sees Crystal Palace as a very winnable game. So if we can have a fully fit Shelvey, a fully fit Rondon, and a fully fit Kennedy against Crystal Palace and again at Leicester, we could get 6 points out of that, and suddenly we're firing on all cylinders.
Some of your more sensitive social media ties have interpreted that as, oh, he's just trying to throw the Arsenal game and saving the players for Palace the following week. It's like, it's just not that simple, man. He's only willing to take a certain number of gambles. He said it himself, like half the players who haven't been in national duty aren't fit, they're injured. Talking about Lascelles, Richie and Shelvey, whether or not they can play, whilst also worrying about, now we've got a squad of players that include people come from USA, South America, Far East. Like he's got so many decisions to make about, right, is he fit enough to play this game? Is he fit? He can't play them all. He's made his decision, and he probably sitting there scratching his head right now thinking, shit, I should have probably gone with Rondon, or I should have done this, but there was definitely some logic to everything that happened, and it's just not that straightforward.
Can I just say to all those people who are those absolute morons on social media saying that politics and he threw the game, like, if there's one manager since Bobby Robson that Newcastle have had whose professional integrity cannot be questioned, it's Rafa Benitez. It is an absolute dishonour and disrespect to a man who has achieved so much in the game to even suggest that he would go out to intentionally lose a game to prove a point. It is absolute bollocks, and I just want to shut it down there. It's fucking ridiculous.
I think there's a few other things you have to consider. I mean, you look how important Shelvey is, and we've already discussed it already. Shelvey is the heartbeat of this team. We need Shelvey to be fit in the games that we've got a chance of winning, not the teams when we're 2-0 down and they've got their tails up, but they're already a better team. Really, what would have bringing Shelvey on for the last half an hour yesterday really have achieved? I mean, might have got us back in the game, and I don't want to be in a position to be throwing it. Like you can't. I know you can't be looking at games saying, well, I mean, he could have come on and won with a game, and that would have been amazing. But if Rafa's got a doubt that if he comes on and injures himself further, then it's going to backfire.
I'm far more comfortable with him not making the subs for everything that you have said than I am with the team selection. So fair enough, at 2-0, like I said, Shelby's maybe got 15-20 in him, and it's 2-0. What's the point? Why not keep him? Rondon the same. But you're right, we don't know. But all we can do is speculate. That's why we do the podcast. Every single time Rafa Benitez has had a transfer window, he's done this. He's not played the lads. But then he's played Yedlin this time, because we can all understand why. Key doesn't make the bench. I don't know why that is. That's an odd one. Maybe because it was, so we're saying maybe he's injured, but he hasn't come out and said that. It just seemed a really weird team selection. The subs I'm okay with. People getting annoyed with. People seem to be more annoyed about the subs and not making them. I don't think that's as relevant to the defeat as the team selection is. There's every single chance that you're completely right and that there are major issues with these players. And let's face it, if we lose Rondon, if he gets injured, we're getting relegated. Normally in a normal scenario, if we lost Rondon at a normal club, A, we wouldn't have Hoslu as one number 2 striker. B, would on January the 1st have a striker signed up and ready to sign on for the game on the 1st. But what we'll do is we'll sign Slimani again on deadline day. Injured.
When your summer policy is sell to buy, that means you don't get squad depth, and you don't have the luxury of just being able to the reason he might have played Yedlin and not Shelby is that, as we said before, maybe he's taken a risk with a couple of players. Maybe he doesn't want to take 5 risks in the same game. That's probably simply down to that.
It's not a sell to buy thing, though.
Sell to bank.
Exactly. Sell to save, and then we'll buy if we need to. If shit hits the fan and
we'll have to crack on because we've been going 40 minutes. I want to talk about Jose Perez in a second, but this conspiracy, or very small conspiracy amongst a group of weirdos about Rafa throwing the game, reminds me of my favourite ever Newcastle conspiracy, which is a game I was at when we won 2-0 at Man City, and Pardew basically put out a hilarious team, like Adam Armstrong when he was 15, Gabriel Obertan, Aarons, who was just a total punt, Ryan Taylor played centre mid, I think. It was just a hilarious game, and we won 2-0. And people in the aftermath said basically the one game Pardew genuinely tried to throw, he ended up winning 2-0 live on television at the champions at the time, in a team that had Aguero, Silva, Toure, all the lads playing for Man City. Who wants to talk about Jose Perez? He's coming in for some criticism. My major issue with him isn't the lack of end product, because we don't get the ball in the box very much, and that's where he comes to life. It's the fact that he's kind of been ending games on the wing again, and I've been delighted for the past 2 or 3 seasons that I've not had to watch Jose Perez play on the wing, because he's so bad at it, and it just seems like we're regressing a little bit with him, where he's kind of being, if you don't want him in the box for the last 10-15 minutes of a game, take him off. But why? I mean, is this just literally Jose Perez's fortunes as a player are completely tied to the teams? Is that how we're seeing it with him, or is there something bigger going on?
I think the problem as well is it's the other options that we've got available. We said it last week. Outside of Richie and Kennedy, you've got Jacob Murphy, and that's it in terms of wide players. In terms of number 10s, we've got Muto in, who we still don't really know how to judge him. I mean, he's not looked terrible, but equally as a £10 million.
I'd have loved to see him play yesterday. Yeah. Nothing against Perez. I'd have just loved to I'd love to have an answer, and that's because I'm impatient. I'm a football fan. I'd love to know if he's any good or not. Yeah. So we're not going to find out, are we?
Yeah, and that's the problem, is that it is we don't know yet what this lad is, and maybe there is an element there that Rafa doesn't trust him yet to give him the opportunity yet, and maybe as you say, we don't see what's going on behind closed doors. He may look absolutely awful and just a headless chicken running around, but he still probably will have to use him because we don't have the
you won a pen at Cardiff. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's looking for small things, and we haven't been ahead in a game this season, which is worrying. He nearly got with it.
I'm not saying I don't think he is useless, but I'm just sort of saying that it's the lack of opportunities, of options. Sorry, and the fact that we're having to resort to Perez playing out wide is because we've got nobody else.
The weird thing about Perez, and why I think he's on the pitch more often than not, is because he is the best finisher we've got. It's mental saying it. He scored eight league goals last season, but his chance to goal ratio is probably pretty good. If he gets a chance, he hasn't really had a shot. He had one really good one against Chelsea, which was a good save.
Lloris made
Spurs,
a great
Lloris,
save.
He's not had a chance yesterday, and he didn't really get much of the ball at all. And yeah, in games like that, I think you're right. I think there's got to be a decision where you sort of say, right, it's not your day, Ayoze, get off. Muto, have half an hour.
Yeah.
And then leave Rondon, put Hostler on as well.
Or even, Richie Smith asked a question saying, is Jacob Murphy good enough, and is Perez still not a number 10? Yeah, I'd love to see, if you give me yesterday again, and this is the like total hypocrisy of us sitting here talking about football and criticising the manager. He doesn't get to, second guess things, and he's got.
Some of us are criticising the manager.
Why not go with Muto and Perez up front? Perez plays up front at Stoke last season, and it's one of the best performances. Will create more chances against the, albeit dreadful Stoke side coming to the end of their manager's tenure. And I'm not saying yesterday I'm calling for Muto and Perez to start or Perez to start up front, but when you see the performance like it was in the second half, and maybe Rafa will look at this for the future. I'm not saying that Palace, by the way, I want Perez to start up front, but you just, as a fan, you naturally think, well, why don't we try something different? Because Hostelou up front, and I like Hostelou, I do, but it doesn't work. We're not going to win the game. It's highly unlikely we're going to win a game this season, in my opinion.
Hostelou's like your stand-in in a play or TV series. He's the stand-in. He basically is the body that he will make the movements and fit the shape that eventually Rondon will fit into. And I think the reason he plays Perez or persists with Perez, because he knows his game more than Muto, so it's maybe like better the devil you know. And we saw when Rondon came on against Forest, there was good link up between Perez and Rondon, and maybe he sees that as the future and Muto to push Perez. But just a quick mention of Perez on the wing. From that right wing position, he actually set up our first shot on target yesterday for Hostelou's header, which sadly went straight down the throat of Petr Cech. But it was his right wing cross that was the Hostelou, and then it was of all people Federico Fernandez who.
Funny story. Here it is.
Tell
everyone what you did.
So yesterday, I'm front row of the Gallagher's because
Hang on,
my
are you going to
injury
tell
case.
us the vision you told us, or the actual truth? which was there for everybody to see on Match of the Day.
I told the lads that I caught the ball after Petr Cech tipped the ball over the bar. In fact, I stood up and it hit my knee.
Caught on the cameras on Match of the Day.
It is. I might put a tweet up because I've caught it on Match of the Day. You can see me missing the ball, but then I grabbed it, or someone passed me the ball, and I grabbed the ball. And in my excitement, obviously we're 2-0 down here. This is before Clark scores. We're 2-0 down, and in my excitement and kind of like, oh, we nearly scored. Oh shit, where's the ball? I grabbed the ball and like hoid it really far to the wrong side of the corner. So we're taking the corner from the left, and I threw it to the right, wasting about 30 seconds. And everyone behind me, the Gallagher, had a massive go at Hostelou because he wasn't paying attention.
Poor lad.
Because he was like looking the other way, and the ball kind of rolled past him, and he didn't know it was there. And people were kicking off, and it was fully my fault. I actually thought it was
where the keeper tipped it over. It was on that side of the
right
goal,
of the
so
goal,
surely
yeah.
it goes to that side of the corner.
He gave a corner the other way, but I just launched the ball, and it went miles, so just wasting crucial seconds. Like,
so it was all down to Dodsey.
Unai, I'll give you the address later to send us that time. For wasting precious time, but poor Hoss.
Just getting in the game there as well, Doggy. You've killed it.
Absolutely killed it.
In all seriousness, Hostelou should have scored. Kieran Clark's header was far better.
Even that was straight at the keeper. Just
by
got
the way,
it.
though,
Centre back to centre back combo.
Arsenal. This isn't an Arsenal podcast, but even though Arsenal won the game, the defending there, like, oh my god, there's just no one marking Kieran Clark in the box. Like, you've only got to see out this set piece, lads, and you've won the game. And to leave Kieran Clark and Mark.
That's how Philip Albert did it, man. He just ghosted in.
It's just like, wow, like so bad.
That's one of the frustrations, though, is that Socrates and Mustafi at the back and Bellerin and Monreal, I mean, and Cech trying to play the ball out and everything. That was a massive opportunity, and that's what's so frustrating.
Yeah, we had like 5 corners in the first half an hour as well, and we made nothing.
Moment of the season when Cech passed that ball out in the first half. It's like, it's as good as it's got.
Sorry, just to continue what you've just said there, like, if you look at that first half, if anyone was taking the game to anyone, it was us taking the game to Arsenal. Yeah. And yes, we didn't create too much in open play, but we peppered them with what did we have, like 6, 7, 8 corners in that first half, maybe 6 or 7.
He is right, like they were just kicking the ball out of play.
They did nothing. they did nothing. So, like, and there's a wider point. You get even like Chronicle saying that we've had a dreadful start this season. Like, results wise, like points on the boards wise. Yeah, but if you look at context of who we've played, how we've played, and how close we've come to getting a couple of points against decent, like reasonable teams, surely Newcastle under Ashley have seen far more dreadful starts to a season. Like, do you know what I mean?
Is this an argument for Hayden and Diarmid to remain in the centre mid?
I've got a good one for you on that. I totally agree. And these people on social media saying, "Fuck's sake, worst start at home for 50 years." Well, it's not as bad as start at home in the Championship, even though we've got more points because you're in the fucking Championship. So like, it's just bollocks, isn't it? At the end of the day. I think that's it, lads. I think we just want to have a quick talk about the context. I mean, Adam, I have a feeling where I know you're coming from. Like, will we be okay this season?
I think we need our full strength side fit, and we'll know then. It's too early to say, but I am less panicked about what's happened the last 5 games than a lot of people are. If you look at our defensive performances, and again, I've got a quick little stat here. Out of those 3 home games against Spurs, Chelsea and Arsenal, we reduced them to collectively 10 shots on target. Now, Rafa will play at the percentages. You could argue, 6 of them went in. But if we keep that sort of defensive solidity against lesser sides, if we can contain 3 of the best attacking sides in the league, regardless of what problems they're going through personally, they're still better than us, all of them. If we can reduce them to 10 shots on target out over 3 games, then we're doing something right defensively. The offset of that is we've only managed 14 shots on target this season so far, and 6 of them were against Cardiff. So defensively, we seem to have it set, and that's impressive given that Lejeune's injured. We've had Cher and Fernandes come in, and we've played a different system as well. We've played the 5 at the back. So that seems to be quite encouraging. But what isn't encouraging is the amount of shots on target that we're missing. You know, our finish against Spurs was poor. Chelsea was poor. Cardiff was poor. That's what we need to improve, and hopefully Rondon can remedy that. But we need Shelvey back, and we need someone like Kennedy putting in a performance like he did against Spurs, which we haven't really seen that level of performance since.
Same question, lads. Ben, we're going to be okay?
I'm in 2 minds, because I think that you have to take the context of the games we've played. I mean, the only winnable game really that we've played is Cardiff, and we've missed a 95th minute penalty to win that, which we could have done. And the other games we've been in them, we've played well in stages against. I mean, Spurs second half we looked brilliant, and we're really unlucky not to win that game. You're right in terms of defensively, we look really solid, and I don't expect us to struggle against the lesser teams. They're not going to come here and overrun Weir or anything. I mean, there's no chance of a Watford, for example, last season where we got absolutely torn apart. That I just don't see that happening with this team that's set up. The worry is always going to be how we score goals, and the options that we've got. I mean, as I say, I'll come back to it. It all depends on the fitness of Shelvey. Now, looking around the rest of the league, there's a few other teams that are looking really, really poor. Burnley, I think, will be a surprise for some. Obviously, they'll point to their European form, and you would expect them now that out of that they'll recover, but they've lost again today, I think, to Wolves, and they look really poor. And obviously, that wild card that is Joe Hart that's in goal for them, he's going to be worth at least 12 points shit.
Welcome to the Burnley podcast.
I just had to get a dig in at him. But there's other teams there. I mean, the Cardiff are an obvious one. I think Huddersfield and Brighton, although they've spent money, you again would say that we're in with a shout of finishing above them. So I'm not too worried at this point, whereby I think we've got a legitimate claim for being in a relegation battle. But it does look harder and harder because we are so reliant on so few individuals.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, the point of this recording the podcast, West Ham as well. No points. They've looked terrible. There's enough teams down there that you want to think will be all right. I think we've just got to remember where we were at the end of the transfer window. I think everyone knew what had happened. Everyone knew that this squad had not been invested enough, and they were probably in for a harder season than we were the season before. Because whilst we kind of got a couple of players in towards the end of it, we didn't know anything about them, and we knew it wasn't going to be the season we thought it was going to be. We also knew from that point, looking at the fixture list, that we would be where we are now, 1 or 2 points. I think we knew we'd be lucky to have won any of those games. Cardiff away being the one, but that's a newly promoted Premier League team in their first home match. Not the best time to play them at all. So in context, the fact that we've come away with a draw and a 2-1 defeat to all of the top 6 teams that we've played, you've got to think that over the course of the season we'll get a bit of luck, and we'll see some of those games where we should have got a point or maybe 3. And we've said it last season. We said it during Rafa's run up to Christmas. Was it 9 defeats in a row? 8 to 9 defeats in a row. We've been through it before, and we know that he can sort it out. And we've yet to see our full best 11 out. We've yet to have, Shelby, Lascelles, Rondon all fit in the same team. You've got to think once we can get them out, there'll be 3 points. They'll be winning games.
If someone had said to me at the start of the season that we're going to lose against Spurs, Chelsea, Man City, and Arsenal, you'd probably think, that's. But if you're going to lose those 4 games, how would you prefer to lose them? Well, I'd quite like to score at least, and I'd quite like to be in the game and not get humped 4-0 in any of them. And actually, we've sort of people criticise me for saying this, but I think they were all good defeats, or most of them have been good defeats. I thought yesterday was, bar the first half was meh. But I think largely those 4 games have been the best defeats that you could kind of hope for if you're going to lose the game. We've scored, and we've taken it right to the wire in a couple of the games. So what do you want, like?
I'll be a little bit more negative. I still think we'll stay up, but it's all dependent on fitness. And we were lucky last season we didn't lose anyone for a full season, did we? Lejeune's already out. And if you were to lose Shelby or... Lascelles is massively important, but we are good defensively even without him. But I still think he's huge. But if you lose Shelby or Rondon for any prolonged period of time, I'd say would really struggle. The issue is, would literally took the piss in January, signed a lad from Chelsea on loan who couldn't get on the bench, who worked out really well, signed Sparta Prague's reserve goalkeeper who worked out really well, and those 2 signings kind of made the difference. If we take the same piss-take gambles this time and don't spend any money, then I think we might get relegated. But enough of that. We'll go to Palace, we'll go to Leicester. This is the beautiful thing about this game of ours. We could be travelling back next week, lads, on that bus from Palace on top of the world. That's football. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that we will go and beat Crystal Palace, who aren't a great side next week. Although I think we're all prepared for the Zaha diving pen right now. And why not? So thanks very much to everybody who's listened to this and watched on YouTube. Give our YouTube follow a follow if that's your thing. Channel to follow if that's your thing. And thanks to our patrons, over 300 of you who continue to support this for £5 a month. Keeps this show free of charge, and you get loads of extra bonus content. You know what, it's not great at the minute, but we still love talking about Newcastle United. We'll get loads of positive feedback, so keep it with true faith.
It's therapy.
Cheers.